Okay, so this is the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2, and this is so much better and more sophisticated than people realize. I just recently finished writing an ANC headphone buying guide up on headphones.com, and I was like, the HDB 630 is like the headphone to get, don't waste your time considering others. But the Bose QC Ultra is more impressive in certain ways, and it's actually making this a very difficult choice. Now, in this video, I'm going to break it down and help you guys understand which one of these might be right for you. But to me, there's just so much more interesting going on with this device that I want to talk about. So this one is going to get quite technical. So without further ado, let's get going with the video. Okay, so as usual, a quick disclaimer here. This was sent to me by Bose for review. Big thanks to Bose for sending it in, but of course they haven't paid me to say anything in particular about it, and all thoughts and opinions here are my own. Before getting into the nerdy technical deep dive stuff here, I'll just let you guys know what I think of this right away so that you don't have to waste your time watching the rest of this video if you're not interested. The Bose QC Ultra Gen 2, just by default, without using its app or anything like that, is a very V-shaped kind of sound signature, very bass and treble focused, but the mid-range on this is also exceptional. It's actually better for the mid-range than the HDB 630. So in order to gain the benefits of that and enjoy that, you need to dive into the app and tone down the bass and the treble, especially the bass. So you can think of the default sound signature here as essentially the store demo mode. And once you actually start using the product, you would dial it in a little bit with the app. But if you're never going to do that, I'm going to steer most folks towards the HDB 630 because by default, out of the box, it just sounds better. It sounds more balanced, it sounds more clear, all of those sorts of things. And if you're wondering, does this sound better than the Gen 1 of the Bose QC Ultra? My answer to this is yes, but it's only really obvious if you do bother to tone down the bass and treble in the app, because otherwise some of those improvements they're kind of hard to notice. And as far as other differences between the Gen 1 and Gen 2, there are a couple things to take note of. Number one is that the ANC performance has changed slightly. The overall amount that it attenuates isn't more, it's just that it attenuates things a little bit differently. It's a bit more precise. And in practice, what I've noticed at least is if I'm sitting here and I can hear my computer fan spinning up, there's sort of a constant hum. That gets canceled out perfectly fine in ANC mode when I have the ANC on here. But then as soon as I start using my keyboard, the keyboard sound gets attenuated more and I can hear more of the background hum. So what I feel is going on here is that it is more adaptively canceling out the acute noises in your environment at the cost of overall attenuation for the rest of what's going on, right? So it prioritizes the things that are the louder sounds, the more like a door slamming or something like that. It's going to do a better job at that than the Gen 1. Now, with the Gen 2 here, they also give you the option to completely toggle the ANC off if you want to, and that does slightly change the sound signature, and I'll show you guys the measurements for that. But they also give you the option to toggle a wind cut filter. With the Gen 1, that was meant to happen automatically. With the Gen 2, you can be specific about how you use that. I think that's nice. Lastly, as far as differences go here, the Gen 2 gives you lossless audio transmission over USB Type-C, so this is effectively like having a DAC in the headphone. So for anybody who genuinely believes that lossless makes a difference, you should be happy. Now with the move to the Gen 2 here, they also changed some of the color scheme a little bit. You now get this more shiny yoke, and you can see a number of different colors on the website. I think overall this looks pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of the shiny kind of luster on the yoke system here. I prefer a more matte kind of visual aesthetic, but as far as the color choices specifically, I think they go well together, and I really like the different options that they have available. I obviously went for beige here because, it's beige, just have to. And for everything else to do with it, like it functions the same way as the previous one. It's extremely comfortable. You guys know about this. There's some of the more comfortable headphones that are out there. This is more comfortable than the Sennheiser HDB 630. It's more comfortable than the Vocal Petite. This is the kind of thing that you can take on an airplane for long flights and you will be happy. But the interesting stuff here has to do with the sound quality, and this really is where I think people have the wrong idea about these products. Like, people have this idea about Bose not being great sound quality because they think they're really consumer-oriented and consumer-targeted devices that just have this sort of overbearing, muddy kind of presentation. I can understand how people come to that perspective, but that perspective is also incorrect. It's an incomplete perspective because what they're doing in here is insane. And for somebody like me who spends way too much time talking about things like acoustic impedance and canal transfer functions, it's actually fascinating. So let's get into this. So for anybody who's unaware, a closed back headphone condition or an in-ear headphone condition is effectively hell acoustically. With closed-back headphones and systems like this, you're dealing with high acoustic impedance conditions. Brands who are making devices that are meant for this use case have to think of ways to solve for this hell. So apart from introducing all kinds of challenges when it comes to tuning these devices, you also have a massive variability problem with respect to how these devices actually perform across different individuals, across different heads. So what is this high acoustic impedance stuff, and why is it such a problem for headphones? Well, right now I'm not wearing any headphones at all, and there's nothing on my ears, and air is just kind of flowing freely. It's flapping in the wind. It's great. As soon as I put something like this onto my ear and couple it to the side of the head, it creates a container of air between this and the inside of my eardrum, where the air pressure in that container is very high. The stiffness of that air volume is very high. This is going to impact how sound propagates at the eardrum. The big problem here is not just that, it's that this is variable across different people. So I might have a larger than average ear canal, you might have a smaller than average ear canal, and this means that air pressure in that container is different between the two of us. So how are you supposed to try and design a headphone that's meant to sound a certain way when you're dealing with this massive, massive variable? This is essentially the big problem that needs to be solved for anybody trying to create closed-back headphones or in-ear headphones or anything that is in this acoustically hellish condition. Now, you may have heard about how sophisticated the Apple devices are for also solving this problem, and that's true. So the Apple AirPods Pro line is able to dynamically compensate for differences in acoustic impedance conditions across individuals, and this would dramatically affect the frequency response, making it genuinely consistent, at least below 2 or 3 kilohertz. Now, the Bose QC Ultra series also does this, but they have another trick up their sleeve, and that is to do with custom tune. The best way I can describe this is that custom tune is snapshotting the ear response and then compensating for it whenever you turn this device on. When you place this headphone on your head and turn it on, it's going to play a complex stimulus tone, and this is what it sounds like.
Battery 80%.
And because there are microphones facing inwards, it's able to read the ear response from this tone and then automatically apply an EQ filter correction. So for those who are unaware of how any of this works, when we're taking a measurement at the eardrum, the strongest contribution to that response is from the ear canal. This is why whenever you've seen the raw plot of a good headphones frequency response, you'll see a rise that goes, up from 1 kilohertz all the way up to 3 kilohertz. And this is what it seems to be snapshotting or compensating for, because ear canals are going to vary across individuals. So my sense of what's going on here is that you have two meaningful processes. Number one is the dynamic leakage compensation that's going on here. So if you wear glasses or break the seal in some way, it's going to compensate for a change in that condition. And it's also compensating for differences in acoustic impedance across different individuals, which is going to lead to a more consistent response, particularly in the lower frequencies. Number two is the snapshotting effect and then compensation for your specific ear canal and the EQ filter that then gets applied when you turn this device on. This second bit has, in my view, created some problems when it comes to the narratives about these devices. So I want to talk a little bit about that next. This only really works when you place the headphone on your head when it's off, then turn it on, then it does this tone, it snapshots your canal transfer function and corrects for it, and then that's the sound that you get. But if you do that, and then you hand the headphones to somebody else, and they just listen to it without going through that process, without snapshotting it for their head, they're gonna get the intended target response as it was adjusted for you, right? Or vice versa. I've seen measurements of this headphone that show a substantial elevation at like 800 or 900 hertz. My suspicion is that that's just because it was primed on somebody else's head and then measured. Or the reality we have to consider here is that the most commonly available measurement systems don't have an ear canal. So what is it actually compensating for? It's compensating for something, even if you do prime it correctly. I don't feel I have confidence in any of those results. And yes, this is yet another reason why it matters that we use measurement systems that have actual ear canals and more human-like acoustic impedance. But I don't want us to over-focus on them just because I feel the only way we're going to get an accurate picture of how these are performing is when they're on our own heads and the snapshotting has been enabled specifically for each of us individually. So this is yet another argument in favor of using in-ear mics on real humans. And if you want to see the results of that in future videos, now would be a great time to subscribe to the channel, because this is the kind of stuff that we are pushing into. I want to give a shout out to headphones.com, who makes all these videos possible. They make it possible for us to have the measurement equipment that we do have, and also continue to try and move things forward with things like in-ear microphones and understanding how headphones function in a variety of different acoustic conditions. So if you found anything that I've said here in this video interesting, consider checking out headphones.com the next time you're in the market for new audio equipment. Also, I have an article up on headphones.com that is a buying guide for ANC headphones. And yes, the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2 is going to be very high on that list. Check out that buying guide. I'll leave it linked in the description. So as I said earlier in this video, the default out of the box sound for the QC Ultra Gen 2 is a V-shaped kind of sound, unhinged levels of bass. I think it's worth toning that stuff down. You can do so very easily in their app. They give you 3 filters, one for bass, one for mids, one for treble. You can think of it like this. If something's V-shaped, you can affect the mid-range by adjusting the bass and the treble. So here you can see a comparison of the default sound signature and what I ended up doing in the app. I think I ended up actually going with -5 in the bass and then also -5 in the treble. Something like that ends up being pretty close to what I like. But the important thing here is that the mid-range, as I've been saying throughout this, when it is primed correctly with custom tune, is awesome. And it is better than the HDB 630 from Sennheiser. Now, one other thing to do with the measurements here is that I did test this with the ANC filter turned off, so the noise control function off, and you do see a little bit of a difference here in the bass and also in the ear gain. I feel this is a little bit worse, so if you want the best sound quality, you would want to have ANC turned on or noise control turned on. Or if for whatever reason you really want less noise canceling, leave noise control turned on and then just reduce the overall slider in the app all the way to the bottom for the noise canceling. And this will minimize the amount it actually attenuates while still giving you the benefits of the ideal sound signature. If you are the kind of person who is never going to get into the app, never touch any of this stuff, there is no question in my mind that the HDB 630 is just a better sounding headphone overall. It sounds more clear, it sounds more neutral, it sounds more balanced. It's better for a wider range of stuff. The exception would be if you have a specific preference for a very V-shaped kind of sound signature with tons of bass, then maybe the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2 would be better, but I consider this again to be more like a store demo mode, where really you're probably meant to be using it with a bit less bass, with a little bit of that dialed in. If you are willing to get into the apps of each of these devices, the Sennheiser HDB 630 has a much more sophisticated EQ functionality to it. It has full parametric EQ available with 5 bands. The QC Ultra doesn't have that. That's the main downside with the QC Ultra, in my opinion. But the benefit of where the filters are for the QC Ultra, the filters are actually in the right spots. You get this really good mid-range presentation overall, and then just very simple bass and treble filter adjustments where you don't really need to fiddle around with the app and optimize it more. So here's how I think about it. If you're considering a headphone to be like your only headphone, the Sennheiser HDB 630 still makes more sense than the Bose QC Ultra, because you have all the flexibility and customization with parametric EQ and 5 filters. It comes with the BTD 700, which has a low latency mode. So that's the dongle that it comes with. You can plug it into whatever laptop you have or computer you have, bypassing whatever crappy Bluetooth controller is on that device, and then you get a low latency function. This doesn't have that. But if you are specifically looking for a noise canceling headphone to take with you traveling, I think that the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2 may be the better choice. And the reason for this is that the ANC performance of the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2 is just better. And you know what's funny? Like, everybody, myself included, we're so ready to just be like, yeah, the HDB 630, it's going to eat the lunch of every other headphone that's out there. It solved ANC headphones. But it turns out that Bose is the one to solve ANC headphones. Or at least they are on a path to solving this problem in ways that are so reasonable and smart. And I don't think they get nearly enough credit for that. Now, if you're wondering about a comparison between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, I do feel there's a bit of a refinement to the Gen 2 here for the ear gain band, where I feel that it's a bit smoother. But again, we're not talking about enormous differences here. This to me just sounds like an evolution of what was already a fairly competent sound signature. And quite frankly, if you have a Gen 1 already, while I think the Gen 2 is better, I don't know that it's enough better to warrant upgrading from a Gen 1 because the Gen 1's already quite good. Again, as long as you know how to use it, that's the thing. So my conclusion here is that obviously, yes, this headphone is awesome. It's extremely sophisticated and it probably deserves quite a bit more credit than it's been getting. But yeah, everything else about what they've done here with the sound quality, the target that it seems like they're going for, it's all extremely respectable. And this gets a very strong recommendation from me. And I want to leave you with this. For all the praise that Apple gets for their headphones being kind of like smart headphones, this is what they should have done. Like, there's this idea with these consumer devices that, you know, you can't give too much customization to the masses because they don't know what to do with it and they'll just ruin the sound. Give them a consumerish sound profile and then that's the sound that it is. This is so much better because you have all that sophistication in terms of compensating for the acoustic conditions and also the snapshotting of the ear anatomy, and then get the ability to customize the sound for bass and treble. This is what it should be. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. If you want to chat with me, you can do so at our forum at forum.headphones.com. I have a thread there where I'm giving impressions on things and people can ask me questions there, or you can chat with me in our Discord, also linked below. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.